Good evening. I'm John Bailey. This is People to be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. Tonight, you've got an advocate for minority youth at risk, Rudy Coombs. For 26 years, he has worked with the youth shelter program of Westchester in Mount Vernon, and he knows firsthand what incarceration does to young teens and has worked all his life to help them. He is currently president of the National Alliance of Postal and Federal Employees in New York and the Bronx. Welcome to the program, Mr. Coombs.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Bailey. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now, I heard you speak at the last hearing on the 2019 budget on the need for youth programs. How has the youth shelter program of Westchester, of which you were president from 2015 to 2017, keep youth moving forward?
The youth shelter program is a special program, and unfortunately a lot of people haven't heard about it. It's been in existence for 40 years now. That's why I advocated to make sure that we have the resources to keep it going and improving in all areas as possible. I was there especially for the Westchester County Board of Legislators to speak about the aftercare program, because once these young men their confidence and their self-esteem has been improved and they feel good about themselves, they don't need to go back to that environment which created the negativity that got them incarcerated in the first place.
Right. So from what you told me when we talked last night was that this program, unfortunately, is only for those who are incarcerated or are about to be incarcerated. Right.
Yes, unfortunately, it's for young men, and we have had young women at one point in time, and they've made the mistake. They've they stepped over the borderline, and they've got arrested, and they're incarcerated. Mm-hmm. So we go in and we interviewed the young man, and if they're a good match for the program, we put them in the program.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens to them during the day? They go to school?
Yes.
And then they return to live at the shelter, or
right.
just?
The school so happens to be right in the shelter also.
I see. Okay.
So it's unfortunate. For one thing, I like to say that the word shelter is very deceiving, because you would think that it's a homeless place for homeless youth or stuff like that. It's not. It's an alternative for incarceration for young men. At one time was 16 to 21, and now that with the raise of age, it's 18 to 21. Okay, so that's the first thing. Shelter is deceiving, and that was something I wanted to get rid of when I was president in 2015 to 2017, the word shelter. But however, the name is still there, and the program is doing a lot of fantastic things for the young men there.
Now, they have to be referred to you by the courts, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
They have to be referred, and it's up to them to choose whether they want to stay in jail or they want to come into the program.
They make the choice.
They make that choice.
And the parents, can parents whose child has gotten off on the wrong foot or committed a crime, can they push for this program?
Most definitely, and you know, some of the parents are going through some stuff themselves. So the program also, if the young man is accepted into the program also reaches out to parents. That's where our aftercare program is so important and so successful, because we work with not just the kids, but we work with the parents.
Okay, how does that work, the aftercare program?
Once they're released from the program, they now can be admitted into the aftercare program. So they have an outlet, and they have people that keep in contact with them. They come in, they have an opportunity to go to school if that's what they wish, and they have an opportunity to look for a residence in an apartment and stuff like that. So they still have someone to talk to them and make sure they stay on the right track.
Now, this requires a large staff, doesn't it, to be able to do this?
Well,
who works with that?
The staff is not large, neither is the residents there. We have a room for 12 kids right now, and we're in the process of purchasing a building which would have at least 20 more kids in this program. We want to start a barber shop where they can learn how to be barbers, and a culinary where they can also learn to be cooks. So that's a part of the thing that we want to have for these young men and women.
Yes. Do you have, you said you wanted to tell a story of one young man who recently came into the program, is now quite successful professionally.
Oh yeah, there's a young man that came in, he was 16 years old, and he was looking at some very severe charges. One charge was possession of a weapon and discharging the weapon in public. Westchester County is looking between 5 to 7 years for that. When he came into the program, he was affiliated with a gang, and what happened was he got caught with the weapon and discharging the weapon. So now he comes into our program. He stays in the program 18 months. In that 18 months, the young man got his GED. He then went to culinary school and got his culinary diploma. After receiving his culinary diploma, he asked could he go to college, and while he's still in the program, we let him go to college. So he went to Westchester Community College and finished 1 semester. Upon the 18 months and finishing that semester, it was time for him to be go in front of the judge for sentencing. So he came to me, he said, Mr. Coombs, what do you think I will get, you know, based on what I've done in the program? I said, well, first of all, your charges are very serious, and you're looking at least, I say, 2 years to 18 months. And so little did I know that the judge who saw his case was very lenient. And what happened to the young man was his felony was reduced to misdemeanor. That's huge. Okay, and his files were sealed and closed. That's also huge. And on top of that, the judge said the 18 months is time served, young man. You're free to go.
That was a very, very good judgment on part of the judge.
Yes, it was. And he was fortunate, the young man, our cook had resigned. So we hired the young man. He stayed in our program as our cook for 3 years. 10 years later, that young man called me and said, Mr. Coombs, I have my own restaurant in Alabama. I'm married and I have a 6-year-old child. So that's a story that's one that sticks in my mind.
We have other stories.
We have young men that have come out of the program. They're in the fire department now. So, I mean, these are young men that people have given up on. You know, you never give up on nobody because everybody deserves a second and a third chance.
Okay. Let's get the phone number in for the shelter.
Yeah, the telephone is 914-668-4702. The executive director, who's doing a fantastic job, is Christian Philemon. Okay, and he's been there going on 10 years now. We just had our 40th anniversary. It was fantastic, and
you managed a fundraiser that was highly successful.
Highly successful fundraiser, our first major fundraiser in Westchester, and it was phenomenal. We have a lot of contributors from that, a lot of organizations, a lot of people have contributed money and funds in ways that can help the organization.
So you had mentioned something that young man you spoke about had to go back to the judge after the 18 months. Is that the limit that you can spend in the program?
No, it all depends on the individual and when his case is going to come up. I think the least we've seen is 6 months, okay, and then the most I think is 2 years. Yeah.
I see, but this is all depending on the judge whether he will refer the suspect.
Right. It depends on some cases. When they go to the judge, they'll just release them back to their families and stuff like that. Some cases are much more serious, so they might be time served in the youth shelter, but you have to finish time upstate.
Is there an alternative for youths that are not subject to incarceration?
Right.
Is there an alternative type program?
That's the alternative, based on the fact that they're not in Valhalla prison. They're in this program, and they get a lot of opportunities. They go to, the kids have seen Hamilton, you know, the play. They've gone to different places. They've learned how to ski. They go to learn how to canoe. It's a lot of things that these young men do that they wouldn't do and have the opportunity to if they wasn't in the program.
Building self-esteem.
Very important. These young men have low self-esteem coming into the program, and when you have low self-esteem and lack of confidence, you become vulnerable to negativity. Gangs, drug dealers. The gangs and the drug dealers are recruiting more than any other organization right now. Why? Because people have lack of confidence, low self-esteem.
So the gang presence in Westchester County is still there, despite the efforts of a number of years ago.
Not just Westchester County, but all over, but yes, yes.
So that is something we don't hear about.
Absolutely.
And
the population that I work with in the youth shelter program, a lot of people don't want to work with this population. That's another thing. But when it happens to your family and your son or child needs the opportunity to find a program like this, this is when you want to get involved. No, don't wait till it happens. Get involved before it happens.
yes, how does one do that?
Well, I just gave the telephone number.
Okay.
Okay.
You call up the shelter and you
Call
say,
up the
my
shelter.
kid is in trouble, he's running with a bad crowd.
Right.
What
Well,
can I do?
again, you can only help the ones that's already stepped over the line.
Yes, right.
But you can come to the program. People come and drop off clothes for the young men, because when they come to court, they need a nice shirt, a suit and a tie, and stuff like that. So you can
Yes.
drop off clothes for the
Yes.
for the shelter.
Take a
Right.
take a note from those white-collar criminals that are being marched in
Of
front.
course, and then funds. All organizations need funds, so you can make a contribution to the youth shelter program of Westchester.
Now, you also were highly involved in the Eagle Academy. Now the Eagle Academy has done a fantastic job. You're now in the 5 boroughs of Manhattan. Tell us about the Eagle Academy, which few people, including me, before you told me about it, knew about it.
Well, the Eagle Academy is a phenomenal school for young men. It was started by 100 black men of New York. And what has happened and what has started it, certain areas in New York City have very high crime. And 100 black men, myself and other brothers, got together and said, you know, we have to find a way to help these young men. So we started the Eagle Academy for Young Men in 2004. And now it's going on to its 15th year. And we've taken the school, we put the schools in the highest crime areas in the 5 boroughs. And that was purposely done because we're trying to save those boys. And now we have, like you said, we have 5 schools in all 5 boroughs, and including Newark, New Jersey. All schools are doing phenomenal in all areas as far as education and academics. I got kids that graduated from Columbia, University of Penn, Harvard, West Point, you name it. And these are the kids that people have given up on in those environments. Okay, you put a kid in a crime-infested, poverty-stricken area with lack of resources and leave them to fend off for themselves. But these are young men that are successful coming out of the Eagle Academy for Young Men.
Right. Now, Eagle Academy, how does one gain entrance to it other than living in the area where Eagle Academy is?
Well, at one time, that was an easy question, but Eagle Academy has gotten to the point where now you got to get on a waiting list. It's not easy. One thing good about Eagle Academy, it's a public school. Okay, and the first principal was David Banks, who's the president of the Eagle Academy Foundation, and he's doing a fantastic job as the president and CEO of the foundation. You have to be on the waiting list. You have to have pretty good grades, but it's not an exception to getting into the Eagle Academy because when the young man is interviewed, they want to see what type of attitude that young man brings. Okay, so the grades don't have to be that great. It's just that you have a will to succeed.
And if we want information on the Eagle Academy, who do we call?
Well, the Eagle Academy has a website, Eagle Academy for Young Men, and it's like I said, it's all 5 boroughs. All the information is there on the website.
So, the Eagle Academy, as you said, has had a phenomenal success story. What is your model different than, say, public schools that may not be doing as well?
Well, you know, one thing I noticed about the Eagle Academy when it started out, you get the cooperation of the kids coming into school, first of all, and they have to wear a uniform. And second of all, the parents have to be 100% involved with the youth, okay? That is mandatory. So if the parents are not coming to meetings and being, you know, all involved with the young men, then that's a problem, and they won't be able to stay there. So that's one of the main things that's helped the Eagle Academy, parents' involvement.
Now, do you feel this is follows the charter school model, or is your curriculum completely different and better?
I'm not going to say it's better because the charter schools are doing a good job also. Again, the important part about the Eagle Academy, it's a public school, it's free, okay, and any child can go to the school.
An important point, it's free because it's a public school.
Right, and that's very important. So the child come in there, and I put my own son in there. He graduated from Eagle Academy. So that shows how much I feel about the Eagle Academy, to send my own son there.
All right. So at this point, though, Eagle Academy has been so successful in some of the tougher neighborhoods of New York. Why hasn't this model spread? Why haven't the public education establishment, i.e. the state education department, people like that, how come they haven't gone to school on what the Eagle Academy is doing for young men of all races?
I can answer a little bit of that question, but David Banks would be the one to really ask that question. You may probably have him on the show at one time. Yeah. But one thing about the Eagle Academy is that it was brought together for a purpose of helping inner circle young men in the hardest crime infested areas. And I think other schools from other states now and Board of Education are reaching out to the Eagle Academy to get that model. Now, is it going to spread? I believe it will, and I believe it has started already. Again, this would be a question and something you would ask David Banks. But I know they're working on starting it in different states and creating that model.
And what is your teaching staff like at the Eagle Academy?
Oh, phenomenal. The teachers are all on board. They want to help the students, and you can ask any student there about his teachers. They're caring. They want to help these young men, and it's working.
You pay competitive education salaries?
Yes.
You do?
Yes. They get a decent salary, you know, from the Board of Ed, and I think the Board of Ed is just.
Do they have to be certified?
Yes.
In your
yes.
I see.
Yes.
So it's essentially just like going to a public school, but a lot better. Now, how do you get? Are the teachers assigned to the academy by the New York City Board of Education?
Yes, it's the Board of Ed's public school. So yes, they're assigned to the school just like that. I believe there's a process. Again, David Banks, hopefully you'll have him on this show.
Well, that's interesting because one of our main problems, my daughter teaches in a school in the Bronx, and one of the main problems is equalness of effort by all the teachers, you know? Right. And I'm wondering how you assemble a staff. Do you interview them?
Well, that's the question you would have to ask David Banks.
Okay, very good. I just wondered about that. Yeah. So now, as far as keeping kids on the straight and narrow after school, in the after program, what does the shelter do, going back to your other organization, to keep them from getting into trouble again?
Well, again, once they come out of the program, they stay in touch with counselors, and they go to the house and they check on the kids and keep them gainfully employed, doing something, and that's very important, especially if they're going back to that environment. You know, you have to keep them gainfully employed. You got to make sure they're doing something at all times to keep them busy, so they don't get back into the negativity that got them caught up into the issues that they have.
So that would require lots of contacts in the community. And once again, in case the community business would like to help.
Oh yeah.
In particular, you said you're located down in Mount Vernon.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the number again?
914-668-4702.
Right. And now, you yourself know firsthand of the problems that youth face in the court system. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, okay. That's, you're hitting on a real nerve there, but I'll speak on that. That was a traumatic experience for myself at the age of 20 years old. I had a basketball scholarship, and I was down in South in Georgia, and I came home to my parents' 25th anniversary, and I went to a jewelry store to buy them the gift. And on the way out of the jewelry store, two Caucasian gentlemen who didn't identify themselves as detectives at the time just grabbed hold of both of my arms and started to pull me towards the street. And I started fighting them off, and then one pulled out his revolver and said, NYPD detectives, and they cuffed me, and they gave me a little good whooping, physical, and then they took me over to a undercover car there, and in the car was a young lady who was high on heroin. And how I know at that time, at the age of 20 years old, that she was high on heroin, because my environment has been around heroin even at a young age. At 9 years old, I knew what a heroin addict looked like. And so I saw her eyes going up widely, and she was nodding, and then they told her to focus on my face, and it was the young man who assaulted and robbed her. And when she said yes, that changed my whole life. I could no longer go back to my school where I had gotten my basketball scholarship until my trial was either found guilty or not guilty. So I stayed in New York. I had 3 trials. My bail was $50,000, okay, in 1973. And my parents couldn't afford that. When I faced the judge said, well, the young man has no prior offenses, and he's in school on a scholarship. So I'm leaving him in the custody of his parents, which was great because I didn't get to go into the population at Rikers, but I did go through the system as being locked up in the primary jail before going to Rikers. I went to 4 trials, right? And first one, the lady came in and said it was me. Second one, the lady came in and said it was me. Third one, the lady came in and said it was me. That was in a time of 45 days, okay? There's no more trials, Mr. Bailey. I have been found guilty. My next trial is to go to the Supreme Court in front of the judge to be sentenced for 15 to 25 years. I was approached by my legal aid lawyer to take 3 to 5 years, and as a plea bargain. And at the time, as a young man, I know I didn't do the crime. So why am I taking 3 to 5 years for something I didn't do? Little did I know at the time that was the best opportunity, because I was risking 15 to 25 years. And most young men and women go ahead and take the plea bargain, even if they're innocent. And that's unfortunate. So anyway, I went in front of the judge, and I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, young man, please approach the bench. He said, young lady, would you also approach the bench? He said to the young lady, she said, before I sentence this young man to 15 to 25 years, I want you to look me in the eye, look him in the eye, and tell me this is the young man who assaulted you and robbed me. On the day of sentences, that lady said, I was not the one. And that's a true story, Mr. Bailey, and one that I'll never forget.
Well, of course not. That's why we had you tell it, because this is what you are trying to help youth not experience.
Yeah, and unfortunate, you see on television now people doing 15, 20, 25, 30 years that weren't guilty. You know, I could have been one of those people.
Yes, you could have.
You know, but God is good.
Right, well, you should rely on that.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Coombs, Rudy Coombs, advocate for youth, and you have helped many thousands. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me tell my story.
Right. John Bailey, good night for People to Be Heard.